I was initially going to do a video about hormone balancing, cycle syncing, eating according to your cycle, etc. But as I was diving into the research, I figured there is a much more important issue at hand that is not being addressed as much as it should be. A lot of women don't even know that they have this condition and fail to be diagnosed with it for a much longer period of time than it should take. And this is why today we're going to be talking about PCOS, or Polycystic Ovarian Syndrome. Hello everyone, my name is Clementina and I do health, nutrition, fitness content here on YouTube. I graduated with a bachelor's degree in nutrition sciences and a master's degree of food chemistry recently. And today I'm going to be explaining to you everything that I found on the topic of PCOS, starting off with what the condition is, what are the most common associations relating to the diet of the PCOS patients, and what kind of supplements might be beneficial for you if you want to improve your symptoms. So let's get into it. PCOS affects between 4 and 20% of women worldwide, depending on the region. There are 3 specific criteria for the diagnosis that were established some about 20 years ago. They involve the biochemical or clinical diagnosis of hyperandrogenism, or the excess of male hormones in your body. This can also show up in your body as excessive hair growth or hair loss. I mean male pattern hair loss, like you're balding like a man, or excessive hair growth on areas like the chin or the back, etc. Other criteria involve also polycystic ovaries, which can only be diagnosed by your gynecologist. And the last criteria is oligo or complete anovulation, so irregular periods or the lack of periods altogether. Polycystic ovarian syndrome is a condition that is accompanied by a large proportion of other metabolic conditions such as diabetes, obesity, cardiovascular problems, etc., insulin resistance as well. Therefore, it is not a condition that should be ignored, especially since it also affects your fertility, and women that suffer from PCOS would have a much harder time conceiving than women that do not have the condition. Since conditions such as obesity, insulin resistance, and diabetes are ones that are very closely related to your diet, there has been a lot of research on the connection between PCOS and the diet of the ones suffering from the disease. Since about 80% of the women that suffer from PCOS are overweight or obese, it is very logical that their diets were also not the best, and most of the women have been found to consume larger amounts of high fat, high sugar foods, also more greasy foods compared to controls, and healthy controls in the studies would have a higher consumption of lower energy dense but high nutrient dense foods that are rich in antioxidants, fiber, proteins, etc. However, obesity does not have to be the sole cause, or the bad diet as well, of PCOS. Doctors are not conclusive on the reason why PCOS happens in the first place. It is a combination of both genetic and also environmental factors. Some studies say that up to 10% of the PCOS diagnosed patients suffer from the condition due to genetic predisposition, but the disease often manifests due to environmental factors. The way that a child is being nourished in their early life can have a large impact on the development of a PCOS, since obesity in early childhood and the consumption of a lot of high fat and high sugary foods can lead to the earlier onset of puberty due to hormonal dysregulation. Therefore, a healthy balanced diet earlier in life and later on in life throughout the entire lifespan is crucial for minimizing the risk of PCOS. However, as I already mentioned, not 100% of the PCOS patients are indeed obese or overweight. There are some individuals that, although they are at a healthy body weight, they could even be underweight, also suffer from this condition. And those are the so-called lean PCOS patients, which do not always suffer from the condition because of their bad diet, or at least not bad in the way that I've been describing up until now. These patients, unfortunately, are often not diagnosed with the condition since they lack the obesity factor. There are also much less studies involving these patients because the wide assumption is that most PCOS patients suffer from obesity. The lean PCOS patients also do not always exhibit these complications that the other obese patients have. For instance, up to 75% of overweight or obese PCOS patients also suffer from insulin resistance, while the case with lean PCOS patients is about 50%. Same goes for the hyperandrogenism. There are also other lifestyle factors that might be very important, such as physical activity, since studies have found that vigorous physical activity especially can play a huge role in the improvement of insulin resistance. The studies also emphasized that the intensity of the exercise was more important than the quantity of the exercise here. Another component that was found to be very important was sleep, since PCOS can also be associated with the development of depression or anxiety disorders. Having a good night's sleep is crucial for minimizing those risks and for improving one's mental health. Now, moving into the diet factor for these lean PCOS patients. The composition of the diet, although it might not be excessive in calories, could also play a huge role in them having this condition. Studies have found that a high carbohydrate intake leads to changes in the follicle stimulating hormone, which is the one that determines ovulation. This is why some doctors might recommend lowering your overall carb intake, and they would even advise patients to go on a ketogenic diet for some time to improve the condition. However, there are also other studies that hypothesize that the quality of the carbohydrates is more important than their quantity. By quality, I would mean having more complex carbs that originate from whole grains, also legumes, etc., that are also very rich in fiber, and fiber is very important for your overall health, as I've mentioned over and over again in my videos. Moving on to the more hidden elements of the diet that could be the reason why you're having severe symptoms. Research here has emphasized that determining whether one has specific micronutrient deficiencies is crucial for the manifestation of PCOS symptoms. Deficiencies in minerals such as zinc, selenium, also in vitamins such as vitamin D, are very important for one's health. Zinc is involved in numerous processes in your body. It is not only important for your fertility but also for your hair, for your nails, and it is a cofactor in over 200 enzymes involved in biochemical processes that happen in you every day. Zinc is contained also in a large amount of foods, in very high concentrations in oysters, but also in some nuts, organ meats, etc. Selenium is involved in numerous antioxidative processes in your body. It is very important for lowering your inflammation. Selenium can be found in seafood, in Brazil nuts in excessively high concentrations, so you need to be careful with those, and also again legumes such as lentils, etc. Therefore, you do not always need to take a supplement to get all of these minerals in the needed amounts. Vitamin D is indirectly involved in regulating your glucose and your insulin levels. This is why a deficiency in vitamin D can contribute to you having worse insulin response that you would have normally. As you already know, vitamin D can only be obtained from you getting enough sunlight per day or with supplementation. Therefore, if you have a desk job and you do not have the ability to go outside in the midday sun for around 10 to 15 minutes per day, depending on the season, you should consider taking a vitamin D supplement, especially in the winter. Now we're moving on to some elements that are not essential technically, but could contribute to improving the PCOS symptoms if you have already tried all of the adjustments that I explained up until now. I found about the application of these supplements through a TikToker. Her name is Mila, and her story was actually really inspiring. She was suffering from the condition for years, and then she shared the blend of supplements that she was using that was really helping her improve the symptoms of PCOS. Then I went to look into the different supplements that she had put in the blend. She later even came out with her own line that was combining all of these components. The only downside to her line technically is the price, since for 30 doses it's around 65 euros, which of course is not accessible to everyone. Some components found in the supplement are also chromium. This is a micronutrient that has been excessively proposed to people for improving the insulin resistance. Chromium is contained in very low concentrations in foods. Therefore, to get the clinical dosage, you need to be taking it with a supplement. Inositol is a huge player in the insulin resistance game. A friend of mine also said that the doctor recommended her a supplement containing inositol for her to improve her insulin resistance. And inositol is an alternative to metformin for people who suffer from insulin resistance, but with the advantage that it does not have the side effects of metformin. Inositol is contained in clinical dosages in most supplements. You would need 4,000 milligrams per day of inositol for it to have the desired effects, and in foods it is present in much lower concentrations. The highest were around 300 milligrams per serving in foods such as kidney beans, cantaloupe, oranges, grapefruit, etc. All kinds of citrus fruits basically. Another element that is present in most of these supplements, also in the blend that Mila has, is coenzyme Q10. It was also mentioned in the reviews that I read for the topic. Coenzyme Q10 is not as widely researched as inositol or chromium. There was one randomized controlled trial that I found on coenzyme Q10. It is also present, but again in lower concentrations, in foods such as kidneys, livers, so organ meats, and also salmon. Mila's blend also contains an amino acid blend. I suppose this is because research has found that amino acid metabolism is impaired in patients that suffer from PCOS. These supplements also usually contain L-carnitine, which is supposed to improve your fat metabolism. L-carnitine is supported moderately by the evidence that it improves one's metabolism, body mass index, so the patients lost weight, also their triglycerides, cholesterol levels, etc. One thing that was not contained in Mila's blend, but there was some research on it, is spearmint tea. And there was this study that said that patients who drank 2 cups of spearmint tea per day did experience an improvement in their androgen levels, so their male hormones were stabilized through the spearmint tea. This is something that I find very accessible to everyone, and if you enjoy tea generally, this might be something that you're not even doing consciously right now. And drinking 2 cups per day was clinically proven to be beneficial for improving the androgen levels. Now that I've discussed everything, the bottom line here is, if you are a patient that has PCOS and you also have a higher body mass index, a higher weight than is healthy, the first thing that you should do before considering that much supplements is to improve your diet and lower your body mass index, get to a healthy weight. So this is the first step that is going to have a large impact in the improvement of your condition. If you're already taking all of these steps, then considering implementing some supplements, especially ones containing inositol, is a step that you might consider taking. Again, Mila's blend, if you have the financial opportunity, is, or something similar to this blend, is a good choice since it contains most of these supplements in one powder. I'm usually not a fan of supplements, but if you are indeed suffering from the condition and you have done everything possible to improve and you still want to improve further, or you find that your symptoms are still severe, then it is something that could definitely help you out. I really hope that I helped you learn something new today. This topic is not talked enough about as much as it should be. Videos like this, or the ones that I saw prior to making this one, are one step further to raising more awareness about women's health. Thank you again for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Also, leave down in the comments what topic would you like me to do a video on next time, and I'll be seeing you next time.